This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 426. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and I am joined by my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Good buddy. Man, it's tough to get on here and talk after a fourth consecutive loss, something that we've never experienced since we started the pod, of course. But with that said, I refuse to get down. I'm upbeat. Because I think this is rock bottom for the season. I think it gets better from here. So however you're feeling now, remember that when we get to the end of the season, because I think you're going to feel differently by that point. That's my guess. It's a prediction based on nothing but my gut. So take it for whatever it's worth.
If this is rock bottom, then yes, that would be the ideal place to have rock bottom, I suppose, because I'd prefer to have it be this week than next week, because then maybe we're due for more rock bottoms. But as it is, yes, a month of losing never feels good. And I just now realize that because, like you said, it's something that we haven't had to experience. Just a month ago, we were 6-3 and looking like an obvious playoff team. And a month later, we're 6-7 and a questionable playoff team.
Yeah, questionable. And you look at the playoff picture, and there's just so much mediocrity in the NFC right now that you still have a legit shot to make the playoffs. Maybe even with just 2 wins. There was Chris Brockman and Rich Eisen were talking on their overreaction pod about the concept of 2 8-win teams from the NFC getting into the playoffs. It didn't feel that far-fetched. Like, there's some logic to that. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it does give you an idea of how low the bar may be to just get in.
It could happen, and I don't really want it to happen necessarily. I'd rather see 9-win teams get into the playoffs just because it'll feel a whole lot better, and I want to be one of those 9-win teams. Shoot, I'd rather be a 10-win team. It's not out of the realm of possibility, and it is what I want. So is it going to happen, though? I don't know. Based on the way the team's playing, I have my questions, and based on the coaching staff, I also have my questions. There's been a lot of interesting developments even since Sunday that we'll probably have to get into, but we do have to talk a little bit about this stupid loss to the 49ers, 28-16. Going into the game, we thought we were going to have Geno Smith, and then after we recorded last week, he injures his groin on Thursday, tripping over a player and isn't able to go. I guess he maybe could have gone according to Pete Carroll, but with his with the pain that he was having, the mobility issues, it made more sense to have Drew Lock out there. Geno didn't dress. They bring on Sean Mannion to be the backup quarterback, and we get a Drew Lock full game for the first time.
Drew Lock, full game for the first time, regular season. And with that said, I actually really thought that sitting Geno was maybe the best thing that they could have done for that game in a lot of ways. A lot of people upset about this loss. I'm upset about this loss. But again, going into this game, did we expect to win? No, not even close. I think we all thought it was like a 5% chance. So the idea that we lost and then you're extra upset, I don't quite understand. But if you think you're probably going to lose this game and you need to be sure that you have your best quarterback ready to go going down the stretch, why not rest him against the Niners? Let Drew Lock get his licks in, which he did, and honestly played at a high-level backup level. A lot of great throws, including those first couple throws to DK right out of the gate. That was super cool. And then a couple bonehead throws. The one pick, everybody keeps saying, Pete and everybody, oh, he just needed to lead him more outside or it would have been fine. No, there's still triple coverage out there. That was a dumb throw. That was just bad.
No, but he could have thrown it there to at least give DK a chance and take away the opportunity for that safety coming over.
Yeah, for one of the 3 players, you bet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still a terrible freaking decision.
DK was beyond the other 2 guys.
The bad decision. That was a bad decision. Had all day and just stared it down. Couldn't put it where he wanted, and it was into a lot of coverage. Second pick, ball gets hit as he's thrown, or his arm gets hit as he's throwing. Hard to put that on him. But overall, good work by Drew Lock. Kept the team moving and really did pretty well up until the fourth quarter.
I guess the other pick probably made up for the other one that he should have thrown when he threw into triple coverage and completely missed. Was it Noah Fant on that route. So yeah, it balanced out, I guess, with his bad throws with just getting hit at the wrong time or the defender just getting enough of his hand on the ball as he was throwing to make that happen. So yeah, 2 interceptions on the day. I guess based off of what I saw from Drew, it was probably better than I expected against a San Francisco 49ers defense. Better than I expected with him getting as much time. At least he knew, what was it, on Friday or through the walkthrough, that he was going to be the starter. So he had some time to mentally prepare for the moment. He had some time to get some throws in with his receivers, which is good. So that part of it helped. But I still think that I saw enough to know which one of the two guys is the better quarterback going forward.
Sure, one protects the ball a lot better than the other. I mean, Drew could have had 4 picks pretty easy throughout the day. He threw a couple into harm's way for sure. And it made you appreciate Geno. And maybe with Geno, the game's even a little bit closer or maybe possibly a win. I'm not sure. But it still would have been a difficult task offensively when you think about the defense getting big played to death, as Pete Carroll put it.
That was the biggest problem of the game, was how many big plays the Niners were able to get against the Seahawks. And one of the questions that we had after the game was if the Seahawks offense was using the middle of the field enough. And I don't think it was any different in terms of the play calls because Drew was out there versus Geno. I think that we probably see a similar, maybe they tailor some things that Drew tends to be a little bit better at than Geno, but it's not like we haven't seen Geno use the middle of the field and then they went away from that with Drew, because we know that Geno can throw the middle of the field. We know that Drew can because he did it a couple times in this game. It's just selectively the number of plays that they run toward the middle of the field. It stood out so much in this game, the contrast of styles, because after you mentioned that after the game, I went back and watched the all 22 and counted a handful of plays where they actually dialed up plays, schemed toward throwing at the middle of the field. Most of the time, there weren't even guys crossing the middle of the field unless they were crossing, the plays where they run, where they set up the receivers on the right side and then they have them run across the defense entirely. And then the quarterback throws to the left sideline. There were more of those, but you look at the 49ers offense and it's like there's at least 4 or 5 plays every single drive to where it's drop back. There's a dude over the middle. They're testing the linebacker. They're testing the safeties. It couldn't have been more obvious than in this game.
Yeah, the contrast, the way you put that, yes, 100%. And it's not just that the Niners have one guy out there in the middle of the field and attacking the middle of the field, is they're usually doing it in pairs, if not trios, and trying to put zone defenders in conflict. And this team in zone coverage underneath is a joke show. Mm-hmm. It's a joke show. And look, they had almost every one of their big plays, short of the McCaffrey run, which you could still maybe blame on linebackers and safeties for not filling the backside cutback and that sort of thing. But man, they all were attacking linebackers and safeties, or that void in between the two. And it's plain as day. It's plain as day to Pete Carroll too. Freaking pissed. I'm not sure that I have heard him this upset and throwing players under the bus in terms of execution like I have heard Pete Carroll say this week in his interviews.
Well, you could just get a sense of how frustrated he is with, I don't know which players necessarily, maybe the ones that he called out specifically, but when he went on the coach's show on 710 and was asked if his message is getting through to the players, and he says, ask them, next question. We've never heard that kind of short answer from Pete. And I think it does just speak to the frustration of, like, he didn't, usually Pete has an answer for that. Like, oh yeah, the message is getting through because such and such. And for him to then say, ask them, like, you can tell that he's got some frustration going on.
Yeah, there's definitely a chemistry / buy-in / discipline issue on the team. And you can blame Pete for that if you'd like. That's a fair analysis. You can blame the players for that if you'd like. That's a fair analysis. Maybe if you want to kind of mix up that all together, that's fair enough too. I'll take however you think about it. But the point being is that when Coach Carroll gets on there and says, yeah, that was easily covered, the deep shot that Jamal Adams got smoked on to Debo. Like that's easy to cover. We practice that all the time. That's easy in the scheme. Everybody knows it. When you hear KJ Wright, who has been a huge defender of Jamal Adams throughout the beginning of the year, be like, that's freaking inexcusable. Like there's no way as the hook defender in that situation that you should be caught flat-footed. None. And then for him to throw Julian Love under the bus in the same way when it came to the touchdown to Kittle, gets sucked up in play action, holds him, gets burned. Quandre just runs around in circles out there for a second, and Kittle runs right by him, and it's a touchdown. The safeties were absolutely abysmal in this game, and definitely not commiserate to the pay grade. And Pete Carroll has had it up to here with it. So if you want to blame coaching, it's hard to blame coaching when you know the scheme is set all up for them to do the right thing, which is what Pete talked about a lot. Yet they're not. But also, too, I can understand how you could blame coaching if you're like, well, these guys aren't buying into it and they're trying to do other things because maybe Pete's message is sterile or, just gone sterile. Maybe they just can't get through to these guys. Maybe they're not paying attention. Maybe they're not bought in. I don't know. But there's problems there, man. Big problems.
And it's hard to believe that the players wouldn't buy in necessarily, especially in an off season where you saw the entire position group of the defensive line get changed out. Essentially, like there were so many guys along that defensive line on the interior, especially that they said, okay, see you, and bring in just a bunch of new players. So I don't see why any types of threats toward playing time or job would go overlooked unless it has to do with the amount of pay and their contract situation. Because, I mean, with Jamal, there's just you can move on from him this offseason. It'll hurt a little bit in terms of the cap, but they've done that before. They've moved on when guys have had big cap hits when they recognize that they've made a mistake. And so I could see right. That's one of them. There's and there's others that we could run down the list too. But there will be changes coming, and I wonder if there won't be changes coming even sooner, coming up in these next few games if things don't start going in the right direction.
If you listen to KJ talk about it, and he was on Bumpin' Stacy's show and talking about all that stuff and talking about the accountability and the buy-in and how livid Pete is and all of that stuff. And one of the things he talked about is like, if I don't see personnel changes this upcoming week, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's alarming. If I don't see some scheme changes, that's alarming. Yes, I do think that there's going to be at the very least, some personnel changes on the back end of the defense, because what's happening out there, it's unacceptable. And the players aren't holding themselves to account, it sounds like. So it's time for Pete Carroll to take the reins here, and him starting to air out the laundry in public a little bit. I think that's a sign that he's like, all right, catfish this. You guys can't get your poop in a group here. Then we're going to call you out. We're going to put you on blast. We're going to embarrass you nationally. So either get with the program or get the hell out.
Well, I don't think Jamal needs any help embarrassing himself nationally. So that's something that he's found it pretty easy to do over these last couple of weeks. The interesting thing that I thought about the KJ Wright comments that he made to Bumpin' Stacy were about the number of voices required to really police a locker room internally just based on the players, and how, he thought that they really needed 4 guys and he didn't think that they were quite there, but maybe that they were close. It's that kind of commentary, though, that it makes, you would only get that from a guy who's been in that locker room and knows how it operates. And to know that, if he doesn't think that there's enough there, and knowing the fact that he's probably got Bobby's number and talks to him. That's a pretty big issue.
Yeah, I think it's very safe to say that he has Bobby's number, and it's very safe to say that I think they probably talk a few times a week, no doubt about it. And he's in that building a fair amount. He knows. One of the things throughout that conversation, and I screwed up, it was on Brock and Salk's show,
okay,
but was that when going through the list of the potential 4 guys that you would need to kind of police the locker room in that way, Salk brings up Quandre Diggs, and KJ's reaction was kind of a squished up face in the noise.
Right.
And that was super surprising to me.
Well, yeah, because, and you're right. It was Salk because we said, well, he just took it for granted that Quandre would be one of those guys because he wears a C on its jersey. And based on that reaction,
absolutely,
that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right. So it is interesting because there were spurts there that the defense played well. You look at the third quarter, and I thought they played pretty well in the third. Really, keeping the Niners to 14 in the first half, I think is probably about as good a job as anybody's done against them in the last 4 or 5 weeks. The third quarter, they turned them over. They got a couple 3-and-outs or at least stops. I thought that they played well. And then all of a sudden for it to all come undone the way that it did, and then everybody to have the big meltdown at the end of the game, it does show you that I think it does feel internal because we keep coming back to the idea that the talent's there. And I wonder, as fans, do we overrate the talent that's on our own team, or is the talent not playing up to the level that they should?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I think of the amount of talent, I was actually just thinking about this earlier today on the offensive side. Can I think of a more talented offensive unit overall throughout the history of the Seahawks offense? And I go back to probably when you had Hall of Famers on the offensive line like Steve Hutchinson, Walter Jones. You had Darrell Jackson on the outside. You had Matt Hasselbeck. Like that felt to me, in terms of offensive line, receivers, and running game with Sean Alexander, that's probably the best, and it played out that way with Mike Holmgren. I mean, they had one of the top offenses in the league the year that they went to the Super Bowl. But I feel like it's awfully close with this group. Like Geno Smith versus Matt Hasselbeck. There's not a huge difference in talent gap between those two guys, I don't think. And receivers, I think it's a more talented group of wide receivers, and definitely a more talented group of tight ends now than in that Super Bowl era with Mike Holmgren. And running backs
are
wise,
you throwing Jeremy Stevens under the bus right now? Jeez Louise.
I'm definitely throwing Jeremy Stevens under the bus, and I don't care.
You should.
And so really the difference is, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, Sean Alexander, you could make the argument either way. I would probably, and Max Strong, obviously. So it's similar enough. And so really the trade-offs are probably a more talented group of receivers versus a more talented offensive line when you line up those groups. And I would still defer to that Super Bowl team, but I think it's a more talented offensive unit than we've probably had in the Pete Carroll era.
Oh, for sure. When you first said the thing, I was thinking about just Pete Carroll era, and I was like, okay, so what, 2012, 2013 are the teams we're looking at, or 2013, 2014 we're looking at there. Okay, Russ compared to Geno. I mean, I'd give Russ of that time period the nod there, I think, just overall with his playmaking at that time. Marshawn versus Sharps and K9. I mean, Marshawn's greater than Sharps and K9. Like, duh. And then receivers wise, when you're talking about Curse and Doug chronically underrated. So I think him and Tyler are probably about a wash, but DK's certainly better than Jermaine Curse. No doubt about it. Tight end wise, Zach Miller compared to Noah Fant and company and Will Dissly. I give tight ends the nod there. Offensive line speaking, I don't know, man. Max Unger, better than Evan Brown, Breno out at right tackle.
Yeah.
Him and Aber right there. And then I think Okung of that era was playing better than Cross is playing currently. He's getting beat a little too frequently for my taste.
I think that's fair. Yeah. And so maybe you would rank that 2013 offense a little bit higher.
I think we can say we can't say that because we can't say that offensively they haven't been the problem, because they have been the problem for weeks and weeks. And then they get it turned around in Dallas, have a decent showing here against the Niners. I don't know. The lack of consistency is so alarming with this team, and they have to pull it together. And I think Pete's feeling the heat a little bit. I think these next 4 games really do help to determine what happens to Pete going forward.
Well, there's got to be the pressure from going from being a 6-3 football team to a 6-7 team. If it can't get turned around and you miss the playoffs after that good of a start, there's going to be people asking questions all the way up to the top of Seahawks organization.
For sure. And then I was thinking about expectations going into this year, that they could be a playoff team, maybe win a game. It was kind of where my thought process was. Maybe other people had different expectations. That's okay. You guys can have those. Those are totally valid. That was kind of my thought process. And the idea being that they were another offseason away from shoring up all the different holes on the defense. And I still believe that. It does feel like they're about 3 players short on defense and maybe 2 offensive linemen short on offense. And maybe Anthony Bradford has a jump next year at guard and fills that void. I'm not sure. Maybe they move on from Evan Brown after this year and go with the young buck and Olu. Maybe he takes a little bit of a step forward. It's hard to know, but especially defensively, they feel about 2-3 players away. I mean, Witherspoon has been a revelation, and as much as people are dogging the hell out of Reek, he's still playing pretty decent football overall.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not as good as last year. You're right. Especially if you're looking at interception numbers, which are streaky as hell. But his coverage grades have been progressively getting better. And the tackling, that's always been an issue with him. It might be for his entire career. Deion Sanders couldn't tackle nothing.
And not to say that Reek Woolen is Deion Sanders, but there are guys that can end up being a liability that you just end up having to work around based on their talent. And on the topic of corners, it got me thinking, too, that I don't know if we gave enough credit to the way Michael Jackson played coming in against the Niners, because that was a guy who I don't think that they threw his direction a ton. Like, you didn't hear his name called a whole lot. And I mentioned Kobe Bryant, and I thought that maybe he got a few snaps out there. He only got 3. I was surprised at how few, considering the issues that we saw with Jamal, Julian Love, that we only saw 3 snaps from Kobe Bryant and only 1 snap from Devin Bush.
Devin Bush doesn't hold up nearly as well against the run. That was something that was a knock on him in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And so I can see why you're not going to put him out there a lot against a 49ers team, which is predominantly set up with the run game and a hot Christian McCaffrey. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of some of these other players that you're talking about here. Maybe a Trey Brown return helps a little bit as well. Hard telling, not knowing. But I think Pete's got his work cut out for him a little bit this week. This needs to be fire and brimstone week from Pete Carroll. And when you're such a positive coach, when you do have to go there, I would think it'd be rather jarring and should light a fire under some people.
And I would hope that it does. I guess the other guy that you could consider snaps for, too, is a guy who is a thumper on special teams that we saw a big hit out of, and that's John Radigan.
I'm good on not seeing John Radigan out there in coverage as well. That's not up there, but maybe the want to and sticking to your assignment would be the difference. Being a military guy, he's got some discipline, right?
Can you somehow merge John Radigan and Devin Bush into one complete linebacker in this off week?
Radabush.
We need some Radabush. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. That'll solve everything.
Anything else you want to say about this game against the stupid 49ers?
I have something for my do better. We'll talk about that then, but
does it have,
I mean,
do we need to talk about the
of-
fight some more, or is that something we'll get to?
kind of a little bit. It's more a periphery thing, but I think the one thing I would like to address regarding the 49ers games is how pathetic the subsection of Niners fans are. I'm not saying all of them, the subsection. See, this is why I have to talk like this, is because of these people. The subsection of 49ers fans that troll opposing teams' comments only when they're winning because they are fair weather, crybaby, catfish ass fans. They are the worst. And I can tell you right now, Brandon, my 49ers hate, which has always been there and simmering, has now surpassed the LA Rams hate that I have. And it's been a minute since that's been the case. Catfish! Those guys, catfish them so much. I hate them with the passion of 1,000 burning suns.
Well, yeah, you don't have to worry about fair weather Rams fans coming into your comments at any point, even when they were on their Super Bowl run. Like, when did we ever hear from fair weather Rams fans?
Who?
I know. I'm talking about something that does not exist.
Exactly. So, yeah, definitely something that was not as fun this week for me. And I just want to thank those people, actually, for reigniting my sports hatred for all of those folks and their stupid team. I hope all of their lives are dandy, their jobs are well, their families are good. I hope their sports team goes down in flames and their fandom makes them embarrassed day in, day out, like it did the majority of the 2000s so far.
Well, that gives us the perfect opportunity to move on to another terrible fan base, the one of the Philadelphia Eagles, who we may hear from this week. So back-to-back fan bases who like to talk an immense amount of trash. And it's going to be tough for them to do it, though, because as we've seen our former defensive guru, Sean Desai, go over to the Philadelphia Eagles, he brought the Seahawks tackling troubles with him because, I don't know, the Eagles secondary, they can't seem to tackle anybody either. I don't know why this is a thing that's contagious.
Well, they did lose some talent in the offseason when it came to the secondary. They did try to help that by bringing in Kevin Baird mid-season there. That certainly plays a factor. But I will say, I actually respect Philly fans. And the reason I respect Philly fans is that unlike fair weather, wine and cheese, eating and drinking, pinky out, fair weather Santa Clara craphead crybaby ass fans in San Francisco, they show up week in, week out. Their vitriol and nastiness is there whether they suck or whether they're good. Like, they're always there. And so therefore, I actually respect their level of
the
nasty.
Consistency.
Yes, because that's who they are.
They're always a-holes.
Sure, and it's a product of the region and that city and all of that. And look, man, they're tough. I'm fine with it. They can talk all the crap they would like because they've earned it over the years.
And I know some Philly fans, so I feel like it's okay to say that.
Very good. Yeah. But in terms of the team, you're right. Defense has not been nearly as good this year as it was last year, which is a bit surprising considering how good their defensive line is that was pushed around by both the 49ers and the Cowboys. They haven't looked good. Are they on a 3-game losing streak here?
Just 2 games. They've done the same thing as us. They've lost to the 49ers and Cowboys in back-to-back weeks, and they did beat the Bills in overtime, though.
Oh, they won that game. Right. Yeah. Okay. But Jalen Hurts doesn't look like it himself. They are talking like he may be injured. I don't know. It's a lot of hard telling to me, but the run game hasn't been quite as dynamic. And the only thing that I'm afraid of is they take out DeAndre Swift and it becomes the Rashad Penny revenge game because that's coming.
It's where they're probably due for it, right? Because I feel like we haven't seen a whole lot of Rashad Penny this year, and which is, I mean, they've gone with an entire stable of running backs who are injury prone, and it hasn't seemed to hurt them too much. But they also have a really tough receiving group too. So I know that even with our corners, I feel like that could be a pretty big test with A.J. Brown and company there.
those guys are damn good. A.J. Brown is legit, former DK Metcalf teammate there at Ole Miss. He is one of the top 5 receivers in this league. However you want to rank him. I'm just trying to give him the props of being one of the best for sure. I like Devontae Smith, one of those speed, quick guys that has amazing hands, just really good. And then Goddard might be better than Kittle at this stage in his career just because he's been beat up so much. But Goddard's a hell of a player. They do have weapons, and it's going to be a challenge. But those weapons have been making mistakes. I mean, Hurts, Brown, and Smith all had fumbles against the Cowboys.
I look at that offensive line, though, and that's probably the position group that worries me the most. Yes, the Seahawks, they've been able to do well enough to generate a pass rush, but I just worry about them getting pushed around by the Philly offensive line. And then really in the trenches overall, that Philly defensive line could show up really tough against the Seahawks offensive line that's kind of been struggling.
That's the half of the ball that I worry about. The defensive line itself, I don't worry about in terms of the Seahawks' defensive line, mainly because the Dallas offensive line is damn good. And it's not like they were getting pushed around there. They got pressure on Dak, and they did some things. Same with the
Leonard
49ers.
Williams has been a huge difference. That trade has worked out well.
Real well, especially if you can re-sign him. And, part of the Pete Carroll recapturing the locker room is to get guys like a Leonard Williams to be able to want to sign back up for another go around here with the Seahawks. But yes, he's been great. So I don't worry so much there. But yes, the offensive line going up against that Philly D line, you betcha. That worries me a bit because even though the Niners offensive line is good, the Dallas defensive line is good. They did go through sections where they got physically manhandled by both those.
The offensive line definitely has had their struggles this year, and especially in these last few games. So against Dallas, yes, against the Niners, it's not getting any easier. Can they continue to do things like run the football, especially with the way that the Eagles are able to shut down the run? And if they can't get that run game going and stay with it consistently, then I don't see the rest of the offense working as well as we can see it work, because those first couple drives against the Niners, everything seemed to be working, right? We had a really nice Zach Charbonnet run up the middle and another Zach Charbonnet run where he's running toward, just making guys miss. So, and then he gets shut down and like the entire offense shuts down and they have to kick a field goal, and it never really seemed to get going after that. Once the Niners were able to shut down the run, it kind of shut down the entire offense. Would it be that way with Geno? I think it would be better, but they have that ability, I think, to similarly shut down a team's run game.
Sure. And the Hawks did get it going again in the third and did score another touchdown there. But with that said, I don't care if they're having limited success on the ground, 2-3 yard gains. They have to stick with it, especially on first down, and set up play action and do all that stuff. And then maybe break some tendencies and work the seams a little bit. But if they can give Geno just enough time, and he's been getting the ball out quick to his credit too in the last couple games, they can give him just enough time. I do believe the defensive backfield of the Eagles is depleted and slumping enough now to where maybe you don't have just a quarter or two of DK and then a quarter or two of Lockett, that they're able to put it together for a full game. And I think you're going to have to score some points. I think the Hawks are going to have to generate at least 28 points to come away with the dub here.
That's the other thing that you tend to have to worry about with this Eagles team too, is that even when they get down big, they don't quit. And so you see some of these overtime games, you see some of these games throughout the regular season to where, yeah, they were down at one point, but they're able to climb back in it, pull ahead for the win. Shoot, they beat the Cowboys 28-3. They beat the Chiefs 21-17. So they've had a pretty difficult stretch of games too, going back their last 5 games. And instead of being 1-4 like the Seahawks, they're 3-2.
Right. And so got the close game against Buffalo, and they've had a couple of those breaks go their way, of course. But I do think at this point of the year, in this particular game, I'm not saying all year, I'm not saying by the end of the year, they seem to be in a very similar place, and it should be a relatively even matchup for this week. I hope that was clear enough for people to not get it twisted.
You're saying that the 6 and 7 Seahawks are just as good as the 10 and 3 Eagles.
Freaking idiot. That guy on the right doesn't know his ass from his, whatever, his elbow. Yeah, I can hear it already.
I don't know how this defense is going to respond to whatever Pete is doing. This is the type of game that is really going to show us what Pete Carroll has in store for whatever players that he's particularly mad about, because it's this and how he handles that and how the team responds. So just as he was asked the question, is your message getting through to the team? He may be saying, ask them. Based on how they play and perform this week, we may have the answer because it's going to be evident on the field.
Right. So at that point, if it does look like more of the same, which is probably more likely than less, where does Pete go from there with this team?
It feels like even though you play beatable teams down the stretch, I don't know if they will be beatable if there is not that buy-in.
For sure. But with that said, all of those teams that you talk about, what is it, Steelers, Titans, Cards, they are on the below average side of the average part of the league, right? Where I think the Seahawks are, just dead average right now. The record shows that. The way that they play shows that. I do think that they have generally beaten up on those types of teams, and I think that they will again. And you could get your 3 wins there and, then roll the dice and hope that, Packers, Rams, Vikings, Falcons, Saints, Bucks are all going on a losing streak here.
It is kind of interesting just how this season has played out record-wise, because you take out the 2 games to the Rams, who are also probably an average team and an average team that just always seems to have our number. And the teams that they've lost to are teams that you would probably expect them to lose to, like the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Niners. And then they've beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, with the Giants and Panthers and a couple with the Cardinals in the division. And then you got a couple other wins in there that are relatively good when you consider the Browns win and the Lions win. So it's a really interesting season. Oh, I didn't mention the Commanders too, but yeah, that was one of their other wins over a team that you should beat. And yeah, it's weird that it's worked out that way, and it's been so clear in terms of how they stack up against talented versus not so talented teams.
Yeah, it's very odd, and for whatever reason, Sean McVay does seem to have Pete Carroll's number. It's annoying. I'm tired of thinking about it. And at this point, you can almost say the same thing for Kyle. That walking piece of garbage. I'll get to that in my do better.
Yeah.
But I wonder, it's interesting to me this season, right? You think about the coaches that are on the hot seat, and the most predominant ones are some of the old school coaches. Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, the longest tenured guys. It's interesting that they all seem to be in Strugglesville to varying levels this year. And maybe that is a mark of a changing of the guard. Maybe that's a mark of your regular ebbs and flows of an organization, that your ups and downs that you have, and that these guys would all still be capable of bringing them back and doing more the next couple of years. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens this offseason. And the stretch of games for Pete, it's important. Like, I need to see something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not calling for his head. I'm just saying I'm definitely putting this into my evaluation process these next 4 games, and whether or not, imagine if they win 3 of the 4, make the playoffs, win a playoff game. How do you feel after that? Like, all these people that are dead set, fire Pete today, or maybe 3 years ago. Like, it's this emotional roller coaster of a season.
Oh, I don't think that those people come around. I think you would have to go a lot deeper to win over those folks.
Like NFC Championship or something? Is that what you'd
Probably.
have to do?
Yeah, okay. I think you would. I think you'd have to do NFC Championship to at least allow them that would buy Pete another year.
The one thing that gives me hope is that going back and watching it and looking at a little bit of all 22, the replays, listening to Pete talk, listen to some former players talk and other analysts, and it all points to one thing. There's some easy things that can be cleaned up.
Right.
So if it's just easy things, then it is possible for them to turn this around and get on a roll here through the last part of the season, which is normally how it goes for average football teams. You have good stretches, bad stretches, good stretches, bad stretches. It's the up and down part. We're due, man. We're due.
They're due. I just don't know if looking at the stretch of the next 4 games and looking at 3-1 as a possibility, if one of those 3 wins is going to be against this Philly team, because I tend to think of them in that same grouping of Niners, Cowboys, those teams that they've already lost to versus the teams that they've kind of eked out wins against, like with the Lions and Browns.
I completely disagree with that. Completely. They beat up on a lot of bad teams, and every time they've gone up against better competition, some of the cream of the crop, they've gotten dusted. I feel like this is much closer to a 50-50 matchup than it is the big bad Eagles coming into town like you did when you went down to Dallas or you went down to Santa Clara.
No, I would have given this team, I thought they had a better chance to beat the Cowboys than they did the Eagles at this time. Now, I think based on what we've seen from the Eagles the last couple of weeks, maybe my thoughts have shifted, but I still don't.
They're a cut below the Niners and the Cowboys to me.
That's what I've seen just in the last couple of weeks, but I don't know if they've fallen all the way down to where I would completely take them out of that. Like, I feel like they could bounce back and be right back into that category. So, yeah, I'm not ready to throw them out of the club yet necessarily.
But they haven't been all year. That's the thing. We've looked at the Eagles throughout a lot of this season and been like, ooh, just eke that one out. Man, kind of got a little lucky there. Jeez Louise, are they ever going to put it together? How come they're not clicking on all cylinders? Like, that's been the narrative around this team all season long.
I think the one that really sets it apart for me is that win over the Dolphins when they won 31-17. And, on prime time.
When was that?
It was late October in prime time. It was Sunday Night Football.
Okay. All right. A month and change ago.
It's been a little bit, but I think that that's not so far removed to think that they can't be that type of team.
I'm not sure that is a thumbs up to the Eagles or a endorsement of the Eagles, or more of an indictment on the Dolphins, who seem to crumble against big time competition and adversity.
And maybe that's part of it too. But when I think of the most complete game that I've seen out of the Eagles, that's probably the one. And so if they can be that type of team, I think that that's the type of team that can get them back to the Super Bowl. But, it would make me feel a whole lot better if the Seahawks, based on everything that happened this past week, this losing streak that they're on, if they come out and Geno's back and in it, and they move the offense against this defense, they're back at home with the home crowd, and they're able to really show that type of game, that type of complete game that I think that we've been waiting for. And I'm starting to lose hope that we're actually going to see it, but I still think the potential is there. So if I can see that, then that'll make me feel a lot better through these next 4 games.
I agree with you, man. I definitely am starting to lose faith, or not starting to. I'm probably 3/4 of the way down
you're questioning your faith. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Of being like, yeah, no, they ain't doing it. Like, this is just who they are. And it's, if we don't make playoffs, fine, I guess, whatever. Yeah, that's definitely where it's trending. But Pete Carroll in prime time, after getting embarrassed twice by the most smug, dirty division rivals that you have, like if that doesn't get you fired up, getting called out in public by your coach who never does that sort of thing, if that doesn't get you fired up, getting called out by ex-players from the team who have rings, if all of that doesn't get you fired up to play your best ball, to lock in, to buy in, man, I don't know what does.
We'll see. We will see what happens this coming Monday night against the Eagles. It's going to be tough with everything that's happened to have to wait until the very last game of this Week 15 slate. But that's how it's going to be. And I'm still excited to watch just to see where this season goes.
I'm a little thankful that we have all day Sunday to sit and just root against all of the teams that we need to root against. I like that. Yeah. I like having that day free for that. That's nice.
Funny thing you mentioned that, because Clinton was talking about the idea of having a Sunday show that goes out ahead of the matchups as a rooting guide for that day, just because there are so many matchups and because they're the position that they are, like trying to figure out which teams we do really need to be rooting for on this Sunday.
So when Clinton brought that up to you, did you instantly have an orgasm, or did it was it a delayed reaction, or that is so in your wheelhouse? Yeah. This team and that team, the permutations and all that. How excited on a scale of 1 to 12 were you?
I was excited, and I knew immediately who I didn't want to do the show with.
Well, Ollie doesn't have to do the show with you or Phil. It's fine.
Just because I know that on that type of show, you'd be like, well, we'll just see what happens. And I'd be like, no, this is what I want to happen.
Will or won't. Well, I get that. That's fine. Me too.
Hard telling, not knowing.
It surely is.
Let's get to the second half of the show.
All right.
As we get into the second half of the show, Adam, there was one question that I didn't yet get to ask you, and it is playoff related.
Okay.
If the Seahawks were to get into the playoffs, would you want to face the 49ers again?
Yes.
That's good.
Very much so.
Do you think our players want to face them again?
Hard telling, not knowing. I have no idea.
That may be on a player by player basis.
I think that's probably a good way to put that. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know. Well, I felt this way last year too, because, and we actually got to see how that played out, but I want to be the team that knocks them out.
Hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. I don't know how many times it's been now. I do know how many times, but I'm not going to say it. But it would be difficult for them to do it 2 years in a row. That would be so, so sweet to watch all of Niner faithful in that entire organization pack up their bags and tuck tail back home without a ring again.
Yeah, as disappointing as it would be to lose another 3-game stretch in one season, it just the opportunity for it. I have a thirst for it.
Especially if the Hawks get hot going down the stretch here and start to figure some things out. Man alive, that would be, gosh, the amount of, what is that, Schadenfreude, I think is the word, would be off the hook.
Yeah.
Schadenfreude. Okay.
Schadenfreude.
Freude. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Schadenfreude.
All right. I 100%
There's
believe
your German
you
lesson
are for sure right.
for the week. Yes, you may defer to me on the German pronunciation of things.
Ja, surely will. Thank you very much.
You nailed it, dude. Are we going to have to worry about the Rams? Are we going to see the entire NFC West get into the playoffs? Is that the most likely of the playoff options? Or do you think Minnesota is actually able to find a way, now that they've moved on to Nick Mullins, to win enough games down the stretch to get that team into the playoffs?
I mean, it's tough to hang your hat on Nick Mullins, though I do like Nick Mullins in terms of backup quarterbacks. I think he's an excellent one to have on your team. I've always been a fan. He's got that little bit of mini Favre going there. You know, kind of him and Heineke are sort of the same dude to me in a lot of ways. But this has been such a bizarre year that you could tell me about anything with these playoff permutations, and I'd believe you, which is why I wouldn't mind making a guest appearance on your guys' little pretend you know what's going to happen for the next 4 weeks pod. And I would actually, I could either do one or two things. I could be a caricature of me and really not everything, or I could be like, yeah, man, it's been crazy. I have no idea.
I love that you have different avenues that you could go to how you'd want to play this out, but.
Or I could just let you guys have your joy and do your pod and without any of my nonsense. So, which I'm happy to do as well. That sounds nice also.
Well, I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. If you're available, you know, it would be hard to turn you down as having a guest appearance on the show, obviously. But
trust me, I have lots of things to do, so it does not hurt my feelings one bit. I like that all you guys, you guys pick up so much slack and do a lot of work without me, and it's appreciated. The
one permutation I don't know if I could believe would be seeing 3 teams from the NFC South get into the playoffs.
That feels absolutely unlikely.
But one of them has to make it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know between the Falcons, Saints, and Bucks which one of them necessarily is the best team.
The Bucks. Yeah, they're definitely the best of that bunch.
If I had to pick one, that's what I'd pick. I just don't know if I can say it as definitively as you just said.
Oh, I mean, you can. You just need to do it.
Exactly. I don't feel that belief though.
Okay. I'll be sure to write your fellow Boomer Sooner alum Baker Mayfield a love letter from you telling him that you have no faith in him. So,
well, if we're writing letters to all the Oklahoma quarterbacks, I would write one to Jalen Hurts this week and tell him that my belief isn't in him. So that way he can play poorly and the Seahawks can get the win.
There you go. See, that is the thing that is keeping Oklahoma quarterbacks from winning Super Bowls is that they don't get your unbridled support and love. That's the problem. It's a you problem.
It's a me problem. And I until they're a Seahawks quarterback, I don't really care.
That feels right. You betcha.
What I do care about is our members of the flock, and in particular, our executive producers. A big thanks to DCH, Rebecca Christensen, Brian Shaw, Jake Burdine, John DeSmartu, Garen Taylor, and Has No Clue.
All amazing people, and Has No Clue. That Starlink thing's might show up tomorrow, and we get to test it out. We'll see if it's going to work in our little tucked-in valley here, but not going to lie, I'm freaking fired up, man. I'm excited.
I'm excited to see what the potential is, based off of that. And I am less than excited to see that we don't have any new members of the flock this week.
I mean, 4 in a row, first time in the Pete Carroll era, the Niners, the way it happened.
Well, I'm not blaming anybody.
I'm giving everybody a pass. I'm giving everybody a pass this week.
I mean, I think it's fair to give a pass.
Just bumps you out on the inside a little bit.
Well, it's just, we set aside the segment to be sure and recognize our new members of the flock. And then when there aren't any, it's like, what do I even do right now?
The good news is that this is so exceedingly rare that we really don't have much practice at it. And that's why this is so clunky. So that's good.
Let's make sure and recognize our YouTube members, because I can't quite remember the last time that we did recognize them. So in the last month, we've had Nate Lloyd, Ragdoll, Replay, YouTube. We have Mitch. We've got Steven Rasmussen. I know I've mentioned Steven. I think I've mentioned all these folks. Pedro Acosta Ferreira. A big thanks to all of our folks who have joined the flock on YouTube.
Absolutely, man. And all those folks, they have been super active in the chat and have good things to say. It's been fun having them on board. No doubt about it. The YouTube beast has been different than the podcast beast, but I'm enjoying the journey. It's been fun.
We even had Ryan911 give us a $9.99 super chat on a show that we ran, and just saying, cheers, Adam. The game was not all bad. Lots of ins and outs for sure. I think we're gearing to peak, though, at the right time.
Yeah, there's a possibility for it. And again, that's kind of why I feel like this is rock bottom with the ebbs and flows of the way that seasons go. It's a gut feel. I just my Hawkra is speaking to me, man.
We need it. We need to channel the Hawkra, channel it toward the team. I definitely feel the need.
Yeah. The need
for speed.
For win. Oh, dang it. Screwed it up again.
Doesn't rhyme right way.
Yeah, that's why I'm the goose to your Maverick. I should be killed off early in the movie. We all know. But then I'd still get to be married to peak Meg Ryan, too, so that would have been fun.
This is when I know that despite, now that you're in the new podcast studio, Brittany is not nearby.
Oh, no, but if she was, I would have let that one fly, too.
She knows your love for peak Meg Ryan.
Sure. And she also, I think, has an assassination plan for Natalie Portman at some point, too. Like, that's probably, if the opportunity ever arose, I think she might heavily consider it.
That opportunity will, I think she's probably safe in assuming that opportunity is not really there.
You shut your door.
I'm not going to rule it out, though. I was channeling.
I did.
Brittany's thoughts there.
Yeah. Let's put it to you this way. I said I was 3/4 out of faith that this team was going to find it here going down the stretch and put together that consistent game.
Yeah.
I'm 99.99999% sure that the Natalie ship is sailed. Ship is sailed. This guy. Right. Cheers. Yeah.
Looking at the Pick'em League standings, we will get right there. But of course, before we get to our Pick'em League standings, we've got to bring in our benevolent overlord of the Pick'em League. It's Evie. Evie coming in this week saying, that's right, play my music and fear me. Dear underlings, have you not learnt? Do you not know I am watching? 2 of you picked the 49ers this week. It is surely an insult and how you would say all bad for your Hawkra. I am writing this before the Monday night game as I have school tomorrow and lots of homework as ever. But well done to Hotlanta Hawk and Tram Rammers who are joint first. I'm very impressed. Dad is now in the top 10, which makes him happy. He finished in the top 10 last year and feels he is some kind of pick'em guru, despite never having won a week prize or been in the top 5 at the end of the season.
Oh, shots fired. Shots fired at you. Man, that's tough.
Yeah, how about that? He does keep laughing at his team name, though. He's not as funny as he thinks he is, but tell him I said that. His favorite names at the moment are Hawkadoodle-Doo and Blind Squirrel. Whoever you are better at life than the man you talk about. Have a great week, and go Hawks from Evie.
Go Hawks, Evie. And to those 2 people, shame.
So yes, congratulations to Hotlanta Hawk and Tram Rammers who are at 135 points in the Pick'em League with still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks until the end of the season. Of course, a lot fewer games in those final weeks as we get into the playoffs, but they count toward that final tally. Week 14 winners. We probably have to go back a few weeks because we've not been calling out our winners like we should have. So we've got B-Wags.
Maybe this losing streak is on us. Yeah.
It might be. It might be because we got away from the Pick'em League. And but really it's not on us because it's on the NFL schedule makers that it just didn't line up with how we tend to record our show. So we can spread the blame around all a little bit.
Oh yeah, 100% over there. That's how I spread it. Not our fault, it's theirs.
Not our team's fault, not our fault. It's the NFL schedule makers' fault.
Oh, for sure.
Screw them. B-Wags to Riches at the top of the league. Week 14, 10 picks correct. So help me, B-Wags. I better not find out that you were one of these two people that Evie's talking about.
Oh boy. And not with a name like me. Wait, come on now. They know the rules.
I shouldn't even have to look, but it gets me questioning because Evie, our Pick'em League overlord, has been on the watch and has found people. Like I shouldn't even have to wonder ever, based on any team name, just because people should have an understanding of the rules in our Pick'em League that we've been, because this is the way it's been for so long.
Yeah, you think that they'd have it figured out, but maybe it's like a Jamal Adams type trying to learn how to play the hook defender spot when it comes to a guy running through your zone.
Damn it.
Maybe it's just a slow learning curve.
I do know one of the people that picked the Niners in the Pick'em League. And you do too.
Was it a mistake? I do.
I don't think it was a mistake. Barry the WC. Barry the WC picked the Niners.
He's the only one with immunity to this, though.
I don't know. I don't know if I give him immunity.
Well, he's not a Hawks fan.
No, but he is part of our community. And he should know better.
That's true. Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I give a lot of latitude to commies for making poor decisions.
That made it worth it right there. All right, Dangerusso, the Week 13 winner with 11 picks correct. Just edging out, grabbing loose balls for the victory.
That's a fantastic team name. I'm in.
Mayo Hawker getting the tiebreaker over you, Amadi Bro, and 7 feeling good. Mr. Phil finishing at the top of the league, but not getting the tiebreaker for Week 12.
Oh, man, tough break for the protector there.
Yeah. And then, let's see, I feel like I announced the two-way tie from Week 11 because that was Spankin' the Kitty and Hawk for Life.
Yep. Spankin' the Kitty will never get old of this guy.
All right, so big thanks to everybody hanging in there for the Pick'em League standings. If you are in, just looking at the standings, if you're at 130 picks correct, even 129 picks correct, you're within striking distance, I believe, of the top spot, because 129 to 135 with these next 3 weeks and then into the playoffs. Yeah, you can make up some of those spots.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think it's a part of this year being so darn weird. You could attribute it to that. It has made it so that everybody's kind of clustered together like everybody at the bottom of the NFC or in the middle section of the NFC.
Yeah.
It's been a weird year. Part of the weird year has been the officiating. But with that said, man, there's been some crybaby ass stuff going on this week. Kadarius Toney lines up offsides, clearly by like a mile. And I can't believe how many credible NFL talking faces have gone out there and been like, well, they honestly really shouldn't have called it. It didn't affect the play at all. It's an obvious freaking penalty. It's his penalty as far as the day is long. And not only that, but Toney, before he even gets close to wherever it is, he stops. He looks over at the official for a nanosecond, kind of throws his hand in the air towards the official. Checked in. No, you didn't check in. You didn't look at the ball. You were so far off sides, it's not even funny. And then to see Patrick Mahomes go into full crybaby ass mode over this. Unbelievable. I had to make fun of my dad about this one, the Chiefs fan. Unbelievable. I can't understand how people are outraged by that one.
Shoot, I didn't realize we had gotten into do better already.
Well, that was going to be my do better until I read the article that I was going to read. But I wanted to talk about that because I can't believe the outrage over that particular one.
Yeah, especially one that was so... It's not like it was close, right? And I don't understand how Toney lines up and looks down and sees the football behind his feet and thinks that he's properly lined up. The other thing I don't understand is how, was it Sky Moore who was behind him to his left, who was lined up 3 yards behind in the normal position? He was standing in position. How does he not realize that Toney is so far ahead of him that to go up and tap him and be like, dude, maybe you should back up here a little bit before the snap goes off?
Yeah, I don't know. And the whole argument of, well, they never used to call this in the past, like it's a rare call and blah, 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 blah. Well, they told you at the beginning of the year they're going to call this. And again, like you said, it's not like it was close, not like it was ticky-tack. Like, it was so wildly egregious that the official had to throw the flag. The only excuse I'll accept is if Kadarius Toney has an astigmatism that has not yet been diagnosed and he just has no depth perception.
That seems fair. But I do think that if you look down the line and you recognize that you're lined up almost in the same spot as Von Miller, that it should give you a little bit of a clue. Yeah.
So I just don't have a lot of sympathy for the people whining about that one. Like, come on now.
Yeah, that was a weird one. It was also kind of weird seeing some of the reporters who were so adamant that Kadarius Toney had checked in with the officials that they wrote reports and posted to Twitter saying that I have confirmed that Toney did check in with a referee. And then we find out from Andy Reid on Monday that no, that didn't happen. So where are these people getting their information?
Yeah, Kadarius Toney checked in with the ref on that play like Ollie checks in with me when we're out on a hike. I'll see him on a ridge 250 yards away at the top of the ridge. He'll stop for half a tick, look over and be like, see ya. Like, that was the amount that he checked in with the official there. Yeah, exactly. Come on. Now, look, if Chiefs fans wanted to cry about the pass interference against, or non-pass interference against the Packers the week prior, yes, all day, yes. That was so bad. But this isn't the one, guys.
No. I would not go after the officials for this call because they made the correct call.
They did. And it's not even close.
On to do better and better at life.
All right, man. My do better this week is for the flat-brimmed wearing Kyle Shanahan of the San Francisco 49ers. And it's easy for me to get him confused with Greg Williams, the man who, if you recall, was the defensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints years and years ago, who put out a bounty on NFL players. And the Saints were then docked draft picks in such things. The 49ers should be docked draft picks for this very thing here. There was an article that came out by, what's his name? It's something Silver. Mike Silver. That's it. Mike Silver from San Francisco, a total San Francisco homer. That's fine. I actually really like the guy. I like his reporting. He puts out this article, and this was a quote from his article. The football and the victory were both secured. But this being the heart of the holiday shopping season, Fred Warner still had one last item on his wish list. Another surly Sunday at Levi's Stadium. It was all going according to plan. During a team meeting the previous night in Santa Clara Marriott, because they don't want to stay in San Francisco for some reason, San Francisco 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan had predicted a meltdown from DK Metcalf. All right, fine. Complete with video clips featuring past fits of rage and the Seahawks impetuous receiver. Quote, "We will get 14 to lose his mind," Shanahan told his players. At this point, I'm still not even mad. Then perhaps jokingly, he tagged his remarks with, "and a Christmas present for whoever gets him." That right there, that last dirty ass sentence out of that dirty ass man's mouth. What a scumbag. I've never liked the Shanahans as a whole anyways, with his dad there being in Denver and all that. And this just hammers it all home. What he did in that last statement, that last sentence, was completely putting out a bounty on DK Metcalf effectively. That's exactly what he did there. Wink, wink, nod, nod. That's what he did. And lo and behold, when did it come to pass? Once the game seemed like it was in hand, on a play when dirty-ass Fred Warner finally thought, even if it all goes sideways, I'll get away with this. We'll still get the dub. Goes out and shoves a man who already has had a broken neck and back earlier in his life in the back of the head and mushes him into the ground and starts the melee, which the rest of it I don't care about. This was Kyle Shanahan effectively putting out a bounty on DK Metcalf. It's gross. It's dirty. And he was fine all the way up until the last part, saying that he would give somebody something to go get him.
Right.
That wasn't talking smack. That wasn't anything like that. Because when DK has lost his catfish, it's usually been against guys like, I don't know, Jalen Ramsey, who gets extra physical and starts crossing the line. That's usually when DK loses his catfish.
Right.
That's exactly what he was endorsing with his players and trying to get them to do. They should lose 15 first-round draft picks in a row, maybe be kicked out of the league. I hate the catfishing 49ers more than anything in the world right now. Catfish! You, Kyle Shanahan, put a bend in the brim of your hat. You look like a 5-year-old, and you suck ass. Do better.
I don't know if realistically, like, it's definitely not Bountygate, but it's enough to be gross. And the thing that bothers me about it is that any talk around that is not football. Like, it's just, that's not part of football. So why would you even go there as a coach? Like, stick to ball. And you can talk about how a player is prone to penalties. But yes, when you get into that, when you cross that line of saying that you get something for seeing a certain action, I don't know if it would be Bountygate-ish to say, hey, if you get them to commit a penalty, that you get something. It's more that physical part of it that makes it gross.
And that's just it. It's a lot like greasy ass politicians do, right? They walk right up to the line. They dance all around it. They say it without saying it. Well, I didn't say that. I can't believe, people got mad and, decided to burn down a police building or riot at the Capitol or whatever the hell happens after people say the dumb catfish that they say, right? This is the same type of crap.
I wouldn't be sad if a rock went through my opponent's window. Like, I wouldn't be sad about that. I'm not condoning it or saying it should happen. I'm just saying that if it happened, I wouldn't be sad.
And look, and if it did happen to happen, I might buy you a Christmas present. Like, that's exactly what he's saying, this crap. This is Bush League bullshit. Catfish. And he can take his overbite and his smug arrogance along with the rest of his stupid fan base and shove it straight up his catfishing ass. I hate this guy. He has now replaced McVay for me. He has. Right here.
That's fair.
And yes, this is all my irrational feelings that I pour into a podcast about football that doesn't matter. That's right.
Well, let's add another man to the list of the sports hate list, especially when it comes to Niners and Niners fans, because you can add Chris Partay of Deadspin to this list, who wrote an article titled DK Metcalf is the Seahawks and his own worst enemy. And I didn't even have to read this article to know, because as soon as I clicked on Chris Partay's name and found out that he grew up in the Bay Area, I knew exactly the type of slant that an article like this in Deadspin was going to portray. Like, he's not going to go after stupid Diamador Lenore, who is just as cheap and as much of a chicken as Kyle Shanahan is, because although Warner was retaliating somewhat to the way that DK tackled him, which, come on, Warner, like, you're a defender. Like, you haven't been tackled hard or been part of a hard tackle yourself. So the
shoe's on the other foot and I don't like it.
DK tackled me too hard, so I'm going to go after the back of his head. Yeah. Cry me a river, dude. Like, you've tackled dudes hard before. So you can't say that that's part of the retaliation, because I just don't buy it. But for Diamador Lenore to come in then and be the guy that pushes Metcalf in the head as part of his interaction with Warner. And then one of the things that's not even talked about is how he comes in and sucker punches Jake Bobo for no reason. Like, what the heck's going on there?
That one.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why Lenore got tossed from the game, because he threw a punch. It wasn't because he put his hands in DK's face. No, he actually threw a punch at Jake Bobo.
Oh, no, he did not touch my Bobo.
He did. He touched your Bobo. And
he touched my, that's it.
So for Diamador Lenore, for Chris Partay, do better.
Do better. The only thing I didn't like about you do better, Brandon, is you screwed up when you mentioned the Bay Area. You didn't say it nearly as douchey as it always should be and is.
I know. I struggle with that part, but I know that you have it well in hand.
Bay Area. God. I can't stand them.
On to Better at Life.
on to things that excite me and things I do like Jeremy Green, one of our little flockers. He sent this to me. So credit to him for bringing this to my attention for my Better at Life. My Better at Life this week is for an Oregon-based company called Samson Sky in Moses Lake, Washington, here in the last week or two. They completed their first test flight of a flying car. That's right, a flying car. I've been waiting for this since I watched George Jetson when I was a kid. This is super cool. The car flew for something like 15 minutes or something like that. Got up to 500 feet. Test pilot said it all did well. And it can go 100. It's a sports car. It went 125 miles an hour on the ground. Can go up to 190 miles an hour in the air. It has a hybrid electric system in it as well, which is kind of fun.
Oh.
And yeah, I think this is really cool. I've been waiting for this my whole life. And good on you guys. More flying cars. So Samson Sky, Jeremy Green, Better at Life, and Skip Bayless.
Flying car first, and then the time machine can come next. That way we merge the Jetsons with Back to the Future, and we have all the things that were near and dear to us from our childhood.
I have a very serious question for you.
Okay.
Would you rather see... Are you ready for the serious question?
Okay. I'm ready.
Would you rather see a DeLorean time machine first or a hoverboard?
Ooh. At this point in my life, the time machine is more appealing than the hoverboard.
Okay. But if I were to ask the Brandon that I knew in like sophomore year, what would your response been?
Yeah, 100% hoverboard.
100% hoverboard. Okay. It's nice to see you growing. Look at this.
Well, we all change throughout our life. And at this point, even the possibility now, okay, maybe in the future, do they have could old Biff get on a hoverboard that buckled in so that way you couldn't fall off and injure a hip or something?
You would think so, but I don't even think they do that on Segways. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that there might need to be additional safety precautions for me to take part in the hoverboarding at this point.
Well, maybe you just need some hip pads or something. You'll be all right.
Yeah, that's true.
Hip pads and a helmet. Yeah, let it rip.
That's true, because when you're an adult,
and then
you don't
flying
care
over the water. It's a hoverboard,
and you don't care how much of a dork you look like when you're doing stuff like that.
Nope. You reach a certain age, and you'll do things like maybe even buy a scooter because it sounds like fun, even though you didn't think about what it looks like when you ride past your friends at the first time.
Exactly.
Fewer craps given.
Well, my Better at Life this week is for our Seahawks linebacker, Bobby Wagner, who is nominated for the Seahawks Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. Every time it happens, I'm always excited to see just which one of our Seahawks gets nominated for this type of award, because it's one of those ones that I appreciate in the way that, for one, generally it's the Steve Largent Man of the Year for the Seahawks that then gets the Walter Payton Man of the Year, just because Steve was such a big part of the team and his work in the community. And so it fits along those lines. And then also the fact that it's Bobby Wagner being nominated, I like it because here's a guy who left Seattle, came back, and is a part of the community just as much as he was before he left, and continuing his work in the way that he is able to be recognized then as the Seahawks nominee for Walter Payton Man of the Year. So for Bobby Wagner getting that nomination, you are better at life than Skip Bayless.
Why in the world do they even have voting on this? Just give the man the award.
Right.
There is nobody more deserving in the world, in my opinion. Yeah.
I always wonder about that. How does, last year, I don't even know who won, but how did they beat Tyler Lockett?
It's a lot of hard telling again. I have no idea.
Did the Seahawks forget to put in the slip of paper that has his nomination and recognition with the league? Did it not make it to the league office? Because that's the only reason why I can think of Tyler Lockett being overlooked for the award last year.
But the thing is that even his extraordinary play on the field gets nobody's attention, seemingly. So I guess it carries over.
Well, Bobby Wagner, the multi-time Pro Bowl All-Pro, and now let's see, is he multi-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee too? He's due either way.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Come on, NFL. It's time to recognize this when it comes time to vote for the top guy.
Absolutely. And, at this point, if he doesn't end up with it, at least he was this week's better at life than Skip Bayless. And I'm sure he will take that and be very, very proud.
We should get him a little patch, that like a better at life than Skip Bayless patch to wear on his jersey, because I'm sure the NFL uniform guidelines allow for that sort of thing. And then instead of having, the Walter Payton logo is pretty cool, but a better at life than Skip Bayless logo, that's got to be up there.
Oh, for sure. See, we just missed it by a couple of weeks. We could have gone with the My Cause, My Cleats situation here and gotten Bobby some better at life than Skip Bayless cleats. That's what we needed to do.
That's what we needed to do. We missed out. That's on us. Yeah. We should do better.
Whiff.
Well, they're Seahawks. We hope they do better this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Monday Night Football. Make sure you're staying tuned, because we're going to be talking more about it as we talk about the matchups in What If coming up this week, and talk about maybe some of your best bets coming up in the PNW PropStars show.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going to be talking about those, because my bets are the best bets on that show. And if you want proof, just look back at this last week. Only one of us had anything come to fruition, and I went 2 for 3.
Congratulations to you. That's a good week. You gotta make sure. Clinton's doing terrible. Maybe we need to take away like his hosting duties on that show, so that way he can concentrate on making better picks.
So you want to give him the Bill Belichick treatment this offseason? Like he's going to get this offseason where they're going to strip him of the GM and make him just coach? Like we need to strip him of his hosting duties so he can concentrate on his picks? Yeah, because I'm not sure that's the problem.
I don't know if it is either. I was just trying to think
it's his unbridled optimism. Yeah, it's his unbridled optimism.
Unbridled optimism is, I think, the problem for us all when it comes to making any kind of bets with our team.
I don't know, man. You know what I did this week and went 2 for 3? I just lowered the bar significantly for my expectations and took outlandish things like Seahawks plus 17.5.
Lower your expectations. The key to winning in life.
I'm not deviating from the strategy this week. I'm telling you that.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.